Well, a couple of months ago, I was talking with you about how many Christian churches in America today, they now have signs out front of their church that say things like, "All are welcome, everyone welcome, come as you are." And I said how odd I thought that was, that a church, which by its very definition means house of God, would have to proclaim with a sign that everyone's welcome. I mean, shouldn't everyone be welcome at church? But of course, we know that that isn't true, that many people are not welcome at many churches in America today, and that's why those signs are needed and necessary. Now, we have a sign in front of our church, which reads in part, "In this church, we believe that science is real." And again, we're living at such a strange time where we would even need a sign to proclaim that. Of course, science is real. But since so many Christian churches in America today deny science, deny scientific facts like the theory of evolution and climate change, it is important for us as a Christian church to proclaim that science is real, because we want people to know that at this Christian church, you do not need to check your brains at the door before you enter the church. Okay. Now, a recent poll showed that 98% of the people who deny climate change, 98% of the people who think climate change is a hoax, they also identify as Christian. 98%. And it's true when I think about it. I've never met a Buddhist climate change denier, a Hindu climate change denier, a Native American climate change denier. They all happen to be Christians. So I'm wondering, what is it that so many Christians in America today, there's a disconnect between their faith and caring for God's creation? Well, I think part of it is political. Many Christians in America today seem to care more about the economy than the environment. They seem to care more about protecting the border than protecting the planet. And they think projects like oil pipelines and multi-million-dollar coastal developments on dune land will be good for the economy and the strength of the nation. And for them, that takes precedence over the environment. They don't really seem to care much that will be destructive to God's creation. There is a disconnect between so many Christians today between their love of God and their care for God's creation. So today we're going to be talking about the love of creation and what we as Christians are called to do. Mahatma Gandhi said, "Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not every man's greed." Now, I think the other reason that many Christians in America today seem to deny science is because of religious fundamentalism and biblical literalism. So, for example, if you're a Christian who takes the Bible literally, well, science has disproven a lot of the things in the Bible. For example, this morning we heard the beautiful creation story from Genesis. But we know science has proven the theory of evolution. So if you take the Bible literally and you think the world was created in 7 days, well, then you can't believe the science. It's incompatible with your understanding of the Bible, and it's why so many Christians dismiss the Bible. Okay. But you know, science and religion do not need to be mutually exclusive. In fact, Carl Sagan said the notion that they are mutually exclusive does a disservice to them both. And Martin Luther King Jr. said that science and faith are not enemies. They are complementary. They are to work together. Now, Martin Luther King Jr. was a Christian pastor like I am, and like him, I too believe in science, but I also believe in God. And it's not a God up in the sky. I believe that God's presence is right here on earth. And I think that's the other reason that many Christians don't really seem to care about the environment, because, you see, for them, God is up there. God isn't here. This isn't God's home, so we can use up what's here. And that our purpose for being is to someday get up there ourselves, that that's our home, not this. And they believe that Jesus is going to come back here someday to renew the face of the earth. So that's his job, not ours. And they misunderstand what it says in today's reading from Genesis, that God gave us dominion over the earth. They think the word dominion means domination, that we can conquer and do whatever we want to the earth. But that is not what the word dominion means. The word dominion means to govern, to care for. God is calling us to care for this creation, to be good stewards. And the word steward means guardian. God is calling us to be guardians of the Garden of Eden, this beautiful paradise, this earth, which God has entrusted to our care. But as I said, many Christians don't really seem to care about that, except when there is some climate disaster. When there's a hurricane coming or a wildfire, they pray to God, God, please save us. And I imagine God saying, you did it. You caused this. You fix it. But you know, only 6% of Christians in a recent Pew survey, only 6% said that their faith informs whether or not there should be laws in place to protect the environment. Only 6% of Christians. Now, we, of course, in the United Church of Christ, we're very different. In our denomination, we place a great emphasis on caring for the environment. It's part of our Be the Church banner. We are a church that believes that a big part of our Christian calling is caring for the environment and for God's creation. We actually have a national officer, a minister whose job title is Minister for Environmental Justice. His name is Reverend Brooks Barrett. And Reverend Barrett says that since so many Christians seem to deny climate change, then they're not really interested in issues that have to do with the environment. And so he, like many progressive theologians today, they're trying to get us to shift our perspective. Now, one of those progressive Christian theologians is Diana Butler Bass. And I got to meet her a couple of years ago. In fact, she signed a copy of her book for me. But her book is called Grounded. And what she wants us to understand is that God is here, grounded, on the ground, not up there. And she says in the book that most of us growing up Christian, we were taught to believe in a three-tiered vertical universe. That God was up there, we're here, and the devil was down there. And our purpose for being was to get up there and hopefully not get down there. And it put our spirituality up there in a vertical way. But she's saying spirituality should be horizontal. God is present right here on the earth, all around us. And in the book, she writes this: Christianity has imprinted a certain theological template that God exists far off from the world. Sermons declare that sin separated us from God. Most American churches teach some form of the idea that God exists in holy isolation and that we, God's children, are utterly unworthy to stand before the divine presence. The role of religion, therefore, is to act as a holy elevator between God above and those muddling around down below in the world. Because of this, she writes, church has become a struggle for me. I have found it increasingly difficult to sing hymns that celebrate a hierarchical heavenly realm, to recite creeds that feel disconnected from life, and to find myself confined in a hard pew in a building with no clear windows to the world outside. This has not happened because I'm angry at the church or God. Rather, it's happened because I was moving around in the world and I began to realize how beautifully God was everywhere, in nature, in my neighborhood, in considering the stars. It took me 5 decades to figure it out, but I finally understood. The church is not the only sacred space. The world is profoundly sacred as well. And thus I fell into a gap, the theological ravine between a church still proclaiming conventional theism with its 3-tiered universe and the spiritual revolution of God with us. That's why she subtitles her book, Finding God in the World, a Spiritual Revolution. She is calling us to shift our perspective. God is here all around us. God's in the trees, in the soil, in the sky, in the water. God is everywhere all around us. Just as Jesus said, if you read the Gospels, Jesus never said heaven was up there. He said the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's here and now. Just look around. Our friend, Father Richard Rohr, says we cannot attain the presence of God because we're already totally in the presence of God. The only thing lacking is our awareness. So I am so proud to be a part of the United Church of Christ, a church that proclaims that God is here with us. And I'm so proud of our little church's Creation Justice team. Over the past few years, they have really become leaders in our community with recycling events and highway cleanups and beach cleanups and community book reads and educational nights. I'm so proud that we've become known in this area as the environmental church. That is really how we evangelize, how we spread the good news, by letting people know God is here with us. And it's also how we honor God, honor the Mother God, Mother Earth, Gaia, the giver of life. God is still speaking. Creation is calling to us. May we have the courage to hear her cries, her pleas for help, and may we commit ourselves more fully to healing this land so that we can renew the face of the earth. Namaste.